10 groups of nursing students from Selkirk College have traveled to Guatemala over the past 11 years to participate in health promotion, human rights, and social justice work. We arrived in Guatemala April 18th, 2017, each lugging 2 large bags of supplies, a carry-on, and a pillowcase stuffed with handcrafted quilts. We were greeted on the ground by Marianne, and although we all carried a level of uncertainty, we couldn't be more excited to be there. Soon after our arrival, the reality of Guatemala's history quickly set in. During a civil war lasting 36 years, the Guatemalan army destroyed 626 villages and 200,000 people were killed or had disappeared. The war displaced an additional 1.5 million, while more than 150,000 were driven to seek refuge in Mexico. On our second day, we visited the Guatemalan National Police Historical Archive. These archives document the millions of lives lost due to military efforts during the Civil War. The dedicated staff of these archives have worked since 2005 to preserve, digitize, and catalog the archive's contents. All of these documents have been made available to the Guatemalan public, helping bring closure to loved ones. As of May 2011, they have processed 20 million documents, with 60 million more to go. Visiting this site was incredibly impactful. We couldn't help but get emotional while sifting through the piles of photo books that showed mugshots of individuals who would soon be meeting their inevitable death. You couldn't help but wonder, when looking at these pictures, about what they were going through at the time. How many of them were able to say goodbye to their loved ones? How many families still live without knowing the truth? Walking through the stacks of boxes holding information regarding the death of so many individuals was incomprehensible.
On our second day in Guatemala, we visited a site of resistance against mining called La Polla. This community has been resisting the Canadian mine since 2012. The mine came in without any notice and began to exploit their land. The land was traditionally used to grow beans and corn, but due to the pollution from the mine, the land is no longer able to sustain these crops. The resistors stated that the contamination of the land and air have caused diarrhea, headaches, body pains, increased fever, and high blood pressure.
You can see over there, they have like the treatment plants, and there's other like cylinders where they would store like the rock after they've taken the gold out of it, like the residue, and then any of the liquids they put in over here, they put in another tailings pond over on that side.
In the words of a community member of La Polla, we either die today from resisting the mines, or we die tomorrow from the contamination from the mines. There's nothing worse than a fight you didn't fight. This visit to La Polla was our first experience witnessing the resiliency of the Guatemalan people.
Are encouraged to go to meet births with my mom.
After a 10-hour bus ride from Guatemala City, we arrived in our new home for 3 weeks, Nuevo Horizonte. Nuevo Horizonte is a cooperative community of 450 people, 100 of which are members of the cooperative. In 1998, as a result of the peace accord, 126 ex-guerrilla fighters who had no family to return to after the war obtained this 900-hectare piece of land that Nuevo Horizonte now resides on. Although running water and housing was promised in the peace accords, they lived without running water for over a year. Through the skills they learned during the war, they were able to stay together and live in Nuevo without any assistance or supplies. They have now created a sustainable community that allows them to experience an increased level of independence. The community puts a large emphasis on the health and well-being of their children, which is evident in the educational infrastructure they have created to foster learning. In the community is a kindergarten, elementary school, and middle school. Also in the community is a health clinic with a nurse who provides many health services. There are also midwives available to offer their knowledge and support to laboring mothers. The warmth and strength of this community was unlike anything we had seen. We were lucky enough to be welcomed into their schools to teach and learn from their community's children. Each night, we ate dinner with families who invited us into their homes. Although the language barrier between the families and us was evident, the connections were made through our solidarity. We came into this community feeling uncertain about whom we would meet and what we would be doing there. Through our time spent there, it was clear that this became a home to us all.
Super hot, but we just unpacked all of our bags, and it's pretty astounding all of the stuff that we brought down with us. So over here, these are all menstrual kits that Joni Bund has made. So these are so that women can reuse pads for their menstrual cycle. So then we got a ton of those. They're all handmade. These are all quilts. A lot of them are inside pillowcases because we carried those down on the flight with us as a pillow. So their bags were all packed to the brim. We've got soccer balls, we've got clothing, we've got props. This is a toothbrush for one of our demonstrations that we're going to do. These are all baby quilts and more quilts. And then we've got tons of school supplies, tons and tons of backpacks that we got from Tech actually. And then we brought down some maple syrup as well for the community of Nuevo Horizonte. Tons and tons of toothpaste, which is crazy because it's really heavy. We've got lots and lots of toothpaste, homemade creams that we've got, Paris Boykin, floss. This is all toiletry stuff. I think we're going to be putting stuff in a piñata at some point, so a lot of that will work well there. And then look at all the toothbrushes we have. Like, it's actually sagging the bed right now. There's so many. And then we've got more. These are homemade soaps, and they smell absolutely amazing. And some medical equipment.
Jose, swinging the hammock. Jose, hola, Canada.
Guatemala.
Guatemala.
El valor económico es necesario, pero vale más la vida que el valor económico.
Let's be clear, economic value is critical, but life supersedes economic value.
Entonces, yo respondí de que el beneficio que nos da esto es que nos da oxígeno. Nosotros plenamente creemos en la cosmovisión maya.
So for us, the bottom line is this gives oxygen. And we believe strongly in the teachings of the Mayan people, particularly their cosmovision of life.
Necesitamos de 4 cosas para poder vivir.
And so the cosmovision of the Mayan people is that Humanity has no borders. It doesn't matter if we're from Argentina, Canada, the United States, we're human beings. But I'm not only referring to human beings, I'm referring to all sentient beings. Everything that has life is included in the cosmovision Maya.
¿Por qué hambruna?
And what we also know is it's not a question of not enough food on our planet. We currently produce 7 times more food than we need for every person to live well. And so why is there still such incredible disparity?
Entonces ahí hay una coincidencia. Ahí hay algo que no está funcionando. Y eso se llama sistema.
And so when you start looking at it and you start asking why, you say to yourself, this is not just a coincidence that this is happening. This is a systematic organization of things that have created the haves and the have-nots.
During our visit in El Astor, we witnessed profound first-hand impacts of mining in the context of health and the environment. We met with a women's group from the community of La Union, as well as 10 women of Lote Ocho who were allegedly raped in 2009 by Guatemalan security forces employed by Canadian mining companies. They shared with us the devastation of their emotional and physical health, as well as their continuous fight for justice. On September 27, 2009, Miner Padilla, head of security for the Canadian mining company Hudbay Minerals, allegedly targeted and killed Adolfo Ich, a respected community leader and advocate for Indigenous people. Miner Padilla also allegedly shot Hermaine Chubb, another community member, leaving him permanently paralyzed and wheelchair-bound. Angelica Chalk, wife of Adolfo, has assumed a strong leadership role within the community following her husband's murder, and is actively involved in a strenuous political pursuit in an attempt to attain justice. The people of El Astor have been in resistance for 11 years in the name of defending their land, and they continue to struggle to this day. The mine has displaced 200 families from their land, resulting in unemployment, food insecurity, and mass devastation. The Indigenous people were not consulted about the use of their land and were forcibly evicted by security forces hired by the mining company. Because they no longer have adequate land, many are out of work, which has left them with barely enough money to feed their children once a day. In this community, malnutrition has become a norm. The people who we spoke with from El Astor strongly believe that the youth are their future. As a result of being displaced from their land, the Indigenous people no longer have anything to invest into future generations. The mining company is directly benefiting from the exploitation of the land, as Guatemala only receives a 1% royalty from the mine. The land is now dust and no longer usable for agricultural purposes. The water has become contaminated with arsenic, and the air carries pollutants, putting people at risk for respiratory complications. The voices of the people we met with in El Astor have been criminalized and are silent to those who have exploited them. It is important to remember we are not talking about a past history, we are talking about a current struggle. Justice is a concept which is impossible to secure in Guatemala due to a notoriously corrupt system. We had the distinct honor of meeting with 10 out of the 11 women who were allegedly raped by Hudbay Minerals security forces during the eviction from their land. The women we spoke with call themselves the Defenders, as they suffer in the name of defending their land. Their struggle is marked by displacement and profound human rights violations. In the words of the woman from Lote Ocho, security forces continue to enter our territory and force us off our lands. We were forced to seek refuge in the mountains for protection, along with our children and elders. Our struggle is for a piece of land our children can thrive upon and can continue to thrive on for future generations. What do they want from us? They have exploited our bodies, our land, and the future for our children.
The women believe it is in their blood to struggle for the defense of their land. They are proud and will continue in their pursuit of recognition of basic human rights. As stated by the women of Lote Ocho, we will share our story with others and maybe change will occur. As members of the nursing profession in Canada, we will continue to stand in solidarity with the people of Guatemala and accompany them in their struggle for justice and recognition of basic human rights. Since returning home in November 2017, 13 women of Lote Ocho were in Toronto. Over 3 weeks, 11 of the women were questioned during examinations for discovery by Hudbay Minerals lawyers. These landmark lawsuits, initiated in 2010, have received global attention as a precedent for holding multinational mining companies liable in their home countries for human rights violations and repression at mines operated overseas. Plaintiffs Angelica Chuck and Herman Chubb will be similarly questioned by Hudbay lawyers in early 2018. To paint a picture of what these women went through, this picture of Irma was taken after 1.5 days of arduous questioning, poking and prodding about the worst day of her life, suffering violence and being gang raped, witnessing the complete destruction of her home, property, and community. This is how hard it is. This is how powerful she is, and how supportive and powerful her compañeros are. The greatest power and strength of these 13 plaintiffs, who are directly taking on the power, wealth, and impunity of Canadian mining companies, is their solidarity and strength amongst themselves, their families, and their communities.
Included in our time at Ella's store, we shared our knowledge on dental health with these community members. Despite their struggle, their engagement, strength, and positivity was inspiring.
What do we have here, Dusty?
It's a cataraka. It's your typical cataraka, the pecan. Just a light drizzle today. Nothing major. Routine work. Welcome to West Milwaukee.
We're just on our way to one of the primary schools. The sun is already high in the sky, and it's going to be another hot day. So we're all feeling really excited about it, and I think it's going to be a real success.
During the end of our time in Guatemala City, we had the privilege of visiting the Canadian Embassy. There we met with delegates from international relations and foreign affairs. We shared a report we had written based upon our experiences witnessing the impacts of social injustices and human rights violations. When we developed our report, we spent considerable time and thought transcribing the people's lived experiences to accurately illustrate their struggle. AMES, which stands for the Association of Women in Solidarity, is an autonomous women's organization in Guatemala. They work on women's rights, particularly reproductive and sexual rights and health, violence against women, and labor rights.
They provide training to develop women's capacity to promote and defend their rights in the community and in the workplace. AMES has a health clinic in their office and a mobile clinic, both of which provide preventative and curative health services. They do all of this work in an environment of constant threat. Guatemala remains a fiercely patriarchal country. Clinic staff have trained women who work in the free trade zones as nurses' assistants, increasing their sense of self-esteem, increasing their leadership in the community, and providing them with alternative employment opportunities. We worked with these women and men in training to become auxiliary nurses. We conducted a day-long diabetes workshop which focused primarily on prevention. It was a tremendously fun experience for all of us, and the future auxiliary nurses shared their appreciation for diabetes in a social context. We learned so much from one another.
During our time in Guatemala City, we visited Chinola, one of the colonies surrounding Guatemala City. This colony is home to some of the most underserved people of Guatemala, and it is referred to by many as the city slums. During our time here, we first met with the president of Kekole, a local not-for-profit community health organization who advocates for the health of the inhabitants of Chinola with a focus on improving sanitation practices, access to healthcare and education, enhancing nutrition, improving community infrastructure, and creating employment opportunities. Kekole works to address issues of inequity to the City Council on behalf of the colony, yet their pleas are continually ignored. Chinola is home to 20,000 people, and of that 20,000, 15,000 do not have access to healthcare, education, community centers, and recreational opportunities. The president of Kekole stated that the City Council and mayor of the colony does this on purpose, as they do not want the people of Chinola to be educated. Education would enable them to understand their human rights and recognize the corruption of the government. These people are victim to extortion, corruption from the local governments, sexual violence, unsafe transportation, poor sanitation, access to healthcare and education, and nutritional deficits. On average, 5 families live in one house in order for them to be able to afford the property taxes requested by the City Council. For many parents, it is a struggle to feed their children twice a day. When we asked how the members of Kekole continue to struggle in the fight for the health of others, the reply we received was, "We do it for the people. We do it for the people who haven't even been born yet. We need to save the youth because that is where the future lies. Even though I am fortunate to have the financial capability to leave this place, I could not leave the people for a more comfortable life, knowing how uncomfortable their realities are." The selflessness behind this response aligned with one of the many values many of the Guatemalan people uphold.
This trip wouldn't be possible without the generous donations from the so many kind-hearted individuals and businesses of Nelson, Roslyn, Trail, Castlegar, and beyond. And we would like to extend our sincerest thank you to the inspiring people of Guatemala for teaching us so much and sharing their struggles, compassion, and vision of the future. It goes without saying that this trip would not be possible without Marianne Morris. Her passion, leadership, and commitment to the Guatemalan people is astounding. She is an incredible teacher, activist, and nurse.
Her values, morals, and ways of being illustrate the type of nurse that we one day hope to be. We would also like to acknowledge that this was the first time Marianne has supported students in this experience alone. And let us tell you, she was fantastic.
In the face of many challenges that we encountered during this trip, she never failed in showing us the light.
treasures on British